Mama, I can't feel my feet no more. Clara Sutton pressed her frozen hand against her daughter's cheek and felt nothing. Not warmth, not cold. Just the terrible stillness of a child slipping away. The wagon wouldn't move another inch. The horse had given up a mile back. And somewhere in this howling Wyoming darkness was a man she'd never met. A man her dying husband swore would save them. If she was wrong, her children would die tonight. If you're watching, drop a comment with your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. Now settle in, because what happens next will break your heart before it heals it. Clara Sutton had made a promise to a dying man. Now that promise was killing her children. Will. Her voice cracked against the wind. Will, I need you to carry your sister? Her 9-year-old son looked up from where he huddled in the wagon bed, his arms wrapped around his younger siblings. His lips were blue. His eyes held the kind of fear no child should know. She won't wake up, Mama. Clara's heart stopped. She scrambled over the wagon seat, her frozen fingers clawing at the worn quilts. Ruth lay still beneath them, 4 years old, and pale as the snow falling around them. Ruth! Ruth, baby, open your eyes. Nothing. Ruth! The little girl's eyelids fluttered. Mama, Bonnie's cold too. Clara choked on a sob. The child was still clutching that ragged cloth doll, even now, even dying. I know, baby. I know. We're almost there. Another lie. She'd been telling lies for 2 weeks now. Almost there. Just a little further. Papa's friend will help us. She didn't even know if Emmett Cole was real. Tommy. Clara turned to her 6-year-old, who hadn't spoken a word since they'd buried his father. Tommy, look at me. The boy's brown eyes met hers. Empty. Haunted. He'd watched Henry Sutton cough blood for 3 weeks before the end came. He'd helped dig the frozen grave, and he hadn't made a sound since. I need you to be brave. Can you do that? Tommy nodded once. Good boy. Clara kissed his forehead, ice against ice. We'll help your brother down. We're walking. Walking? Will's voice cracked. Mama, we can't. The horse is dead, William. The words fell between them like stones. Will's face crumbled just for a moment before he forced it back into that terrible adult mask he'd been wearing since Henry got sick. Yes, ma'am. Clara wrapped Ruth in every blanket they had and lifted the child against her chest. Her arms screamed in protest. She'd eaten nothing but snow and prayer for 2 days, saving the last of their hardtack for the children. Hold on to each other, she ordered. Don't let go. No matter what, don't let go. Will took Tommy's hand. Tommy clutched the back of Will's coat, and they stepped off the wagon into the storm. The cold was a living thing. It had teeth and claws and a hunger that went straight to the bone. Clara felt it trying to pull Ruth from her arms, trying to drag her children into the white nothing that surrounded them. Keep moving, she called back. Just keep moving. I can't see nothing, Mama, Will shouted. Follow my voice. 1 foot, then the other. Ruth was getting heavier, or Clara was getting weaker. Both probably. Both. Henry had drawn her a map before he died. His hands had shaken so badly the lines were barely readable. 5 miles west of Bitter Creek, he'd rasped. Cole's Ranch, can't miss it. Windmill on the North Ridge. She couldn't see 5 feet in front of her face, let alone a windmill. Henry, she whispered into the storm. Henry, if you're up there, help me, please. Help me find him. The wind howled back, mocking. Clara walked. Minutes. Hours. She lost track. Her legs stopped feeling like legs and became something mechanical, something that moved only because stopping meant death. Ruth had gone completely still. Baby. Clara shook her daughter gently. Ruth, say something. Silence. Ruth. Leave me alone, Mama. The voice was barely a whisper. Wanna sleep? No, no sleeping. Tell me about Bonnie. Tell me what Bonnie wants for Christmas. Bonnie wants... Ruth's eyes fluttered. Bonnie wants a warm house. That's right, a warm house. We're going to find one. Just stay awake for Mama. Okay, Mama. Behind her, Clara heard Will cry out. She spun around or tried to. Her body moved like it was underwater. Tommy had fallen. He lay in the snow, not moving, his small body already being covered by white. No! Clara's scream tore through the storm. We'll get him up. Will was trying. He was pulling at his brother's arm, tears freezing on his cheeks. He won't move, Mama. He won't move. Clara looked at Ruth in her arms, looked at Tommy in the snow, looked at Will, who was 9 years old and trying to save everyone because his father was dead and his mother was failing. She couldn't carry them all. Dear God, she breathed. Dear God, please. And then light. Faint. Distant, but real. Will. Clara pointed with her chin because her arms couldn't move. Do you see that? The boy squinted through the storm, his face transformed. A light. Mama, there's a light. Pick up your brother. Now. Will bent down, wrapped his arms around Tommy's chest, and pulled. The 6-year-old was barely conscious, but he got his feet under him. Move! Clara screamed. Move toward the light. They stumbled forward. 4 broken people chasing a distant glow through a world that wanted them dead. Clara's legs gave out twice. Both times Will grabbed her arm and pulled her up. 9 years old, saving his mother. The light grew brighter. Clara could make out a shape now. A building, a house, and standing on the porch, rifle in hand, was a man. Please! Clara's voice tore from her throat. Please help us. The man didn't move. My children, they're dying. Please. Still nothing. Clara fell to her knees in the snow, still clutching Ruth. Will collapsed beside her, Tommy sagging against his shoulder. This was it. This was where they died. 10 feet from salvation, and the man with the rifle was going to let them freeze. Then the figure moved. He came down the porch steps, fast, rifle thrown aside. He was big, tall, and broad-shouldered, moving like a man half his age, despite the gray in his hair. How many? His voice was rough as gravel. 3 children. Please, there. He didn't wait for her to finish. He pulled Ruth from Clara's arms. She tried to hold on, instinct screaming not to let go, but she had no strength left and shouted toward the house. Martha, get the fire up. Get blankets. An older woman appeared in the doorway. Lord have mercy. Now Martha. The man turned back to Clara. Can you walk? My boys? I got 'em. He whistled sharply, and another figure emerged from somewhere younger, maybe a ranch hand. Caleb, take the older one. I got these 2. Clara watched as strangers scooped up her children and carried them toward warmth. She tried to follow, tried to stand, but her legs had finally completely given up. She pitched forward into the snow. The last thing she felt was strong arms catching her. The last thing she heard was that rough voice saying, I got you, ma'am, I got you. Then nothing. Clara woke to heat. It pressed against her skin like a living thing so intense after the endless cold that she gasped. Her eyes flew open, her body jerking upright. Easy. A hand pressed gently against her shoulder. Easy now. You're safe. She was lying on a narrow bed in a room lit by firelight. Every muscle in her body screamed. Her fingers and toes burned with returning circulation. My children. She grabbed the hand on her shoulder. Where are my children? The man from the porch sat beside the bed. In the firelight, Clara could see him properly for the first time. 40, maybe older. Dark hair shot through with silver. A scar running from his left eyebrow into his hairline. Eyes the color of old whiskey, tired and deep. They're alive, he said. All 3, sleeping in the next room. Clara's breath left her in a rush. She pressed her hand against her mouth, fighting back a sob. The little one was close. The man continued, his voice low. Real close. But she's strong. Got her warmed up, got some broth in her. She'll be all right. Ruth. Clara whispered her daughter's name like a prayer. And the boys, Tommy, he hasn't spoken since. The older one told me, said his brother don't talk no more. The man's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. He talked to the dog, though. Clara blinked. What? My dog Blue. Old hound sleeps by the fire. Your boy looked at him and said, good dog. Just like that. Good dog. For the first time in 2 weeks, Clara felt tears that weren't from despair. He spoke 2 words, but it's a start. Clara covered her face with her hands and wept. She wept for Henry, who would never know his son's first words after silence. She wept for her children who'd survived a journey that should have killed them. She wept for herself, for the weight she'd carried alone since her husband started coughing blood. The man didn't try to stop her, didn't offer hollow comfort, just sat there solid and silent until the tears ran out. I'm sorry. Clara wiped her face with shaking hands. I don't even know your name, and I'm Emmett Cole. Clara went still. You're Emmett Cole. I am. Then you got Henry's letter. Something flickered across Emmett's face. Pain, maybe, or memory. I did. He said, Clara's voice broke. He said you'd help. He said you owed him a debt. Emmett was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Your husband saved my life at Antietam. Took a bayonet meant for my throat. Carried me half a mile to the field hospital while bleeding out himself. He met Clara's eyes. That ain't a debt you pay off. That's a debt you carry forever. Clara's throat tightened. He never told me the details, just said you were a good man. He was wrong about that. Emmett stood moving toward the fire. But I made him a promise when that letter came. Told him I'd take care of his family if they made it here. He turned back to face her. You made it, so I'll keep my word. For how long? The question hung in the air. Clara hadn't meant to ask it so bluntly, but she was too tired for games. She needed to know what she was dealing with. Long as you need. Emmett's voice was steady. This ranch is big enough. House has 2 bedrooms. I can sleep in the barn. Mr. Cole? Emmett. Emmett. Clara forced herself to meet his gaze. I won't be charity. I can work. I can cook, clean, mend. I can help with the animals if you show me how. My boys are young, but they're strong and... Ma'am. Clara. Clara. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. You just walked through a blizzard carrying a 4-year-old. You don't gotta prove nothing to me tonight. Rest. We'll figure out the rest come morning. He headed for the door, and Clara realized with a start that he was really going to leave. Going to give her privacy, give her space to recover. When was the last time anyone had done something for her without expecting something in return? Emmett. He paused, hand on the doorframe. Thank you. The words felt pathetically inadequate. For saving my children. For taking us in. For all of it. Emmett was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Your husband was the bravest man I ever knew. Only thing I'm doing is paying forward what he gave me. He was gone before Clara could respond. She lay back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the house, an old clock ticked. And for the first time since Henry got sick, Clara Sutton allowed herself to feel something other than fear. It wasn't hope. Not yet. But it was close. The next morning came gray and cold, but the storm had passed. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices, her children's voices. She was out of bed before her body could protest, stumbling toward the main room on legs that still ached from the journey, and stopped in the doorway. Will sat at a wooden table, a plate of eggs in front of him, talking animatedly to the older woman Martha Clara remembered, about something involving horses. His cheeks were pink with warmth. He was actually smiling. Tommy sat on the floor beside a grizzled old hound dog stroking its ears. He wasn't speaking, but he was present in a way Clara hadn't seen since Henry's death. And Ruth was perched on Emmett Cole's knee, chattering away while he listened with more patience than Clara would have expected from such a rough-looking man. And Bonnie says she likes it here because it's warm, and she says the dog is nice even though he smells funny, and she says, Ruth. Clara found her voice. Let Mr. Cole eat his breakfast. Ruth twisted around, her face lighting up. Mama, you're awake. Mr. Emmett says we can stay here. He says there's chickens and horses and a whole barn and… Breathe, child. Martha appeared beside Clara with a cup of coffee. Sit down before you fall down, Mrs. Sutton. You look like a strong wind would blow you clean to Nebraska. Clara sank into a chair, her eyes still on her children. They were alive. They were warm. They were talking well. Will and Ruth were talking. Tommy was quiet, but he was there. They ate everything I put in front of them, Martha said, not unkindly. When's the last time these children had a proper meal? I don't. Clara's voice caught. It's been a while. I reckoned as much. Martha patted her shoulder. Well, there's plenty here. Emmett runs a good operation, and my pantry's well stocked. Those young'uns will be filled out again before spring. Before spring. The words hit Clara like a physical blow. Did Martha know something Clara didn't? Had Emmett already decided they could stay that long, Mrs. Sutton? Clara looked up. Emmett had handed Ruth off to Martha and was standing by the door, hat in hand. A word? She followed him onto the porch, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. The world beyond the ranch was white, and still the storm's fury replaced by an almost painful silence. Your horse is dead, Emmett said without preamble. Found the wagon this morning about a mile east. Not much worth salvaging, but I brought back what I could. Some clothes, a Bible, a rifle. Clara nodded. The rifle had been Henry's. She'd hoped to never use it. That rifle… Emmett continued studying her face. It's got 4 bullets in it. Were you expecting trouble? Clara hesitated. This was the moment. She could lie, could pretend they were simply a widow and her children seeking help from an old friend, or she could tell the truth and risk being turned away. Henry's voice echoed in her memory. Emmett Cole is the most honest man I ever met. He won't tolerate liars. Yes, Clara said quietly. I was expecting trouble. What kind? The kind that has a name. Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. Floyd Sutton, Henry's brother. Emmett's expression didn't change, but she saw his shoulders tense. He coming after you. He thinks he owns me now that Henry's dead. Thinks he has a right to… Clara's voice faltered. To claim me. And the children. And whatever land Henry left behind. The law allows that. The law allows a lot of things when you're a widow with no family. Bitterness crept into Clara's voice. Floyd was at the funeral. Told me I had 2 weeks to mourn, and then he'd be back to discuss arrangements. And you ran. I took my children and I left in the middle of the night with nothing but that wagon and that horse and the address Henry gave me. Clara's hands were shaking. Floyd will come looking. He's not the kind to let things go. Emmett was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and hard. Then he'll find you on my land under my protection. He met her eyes. And he'll learn what happens to men who threaten women and children in Wyoming. Clara stared at him. You don't even know me. I knew your husband, that's enough. But Floyd, he's dangerous. He's cruel. Ma'am. Emmett held up a hand. I survived Antietam. I survived Gettysburg. I buried my wife and my son on the hill behind this house. There ain't much left in this world that scares me. He put his hat on, settling it low over his eyes. Floyd Sutton, don't make the list. He stepped off the porch into the snow, heading toward the barn. Clara watched him go, this stranger who'd promised to protect her, who'd opened his home without asking anything in return. Behind her, the door opened. Ruth appeared. Bonnie clutched to her chest. "Mama." The little girl slipped her hand into Clara's. "Is this our home now?" Clara looked at the ranch, the sturdy house, the barn, the windmill turning slowly against the gray sky. She looked at Emmett's retreating figure, steady and sure. She thought about Henry's last words to her, whispered through cracked lips and failing breath. "Take them to Emmett. He'll keep you safe. He'll give you a home." "Yes, baby." Clara squeezed her daughter's hand. "I think maybe it is." The first week passed in a blur of small miracles. Clara woke each morning expecting the dream to shatter, expecting Emmett to change his mind, expecting Floyd's face at the window, expecting her children to slip back into the hollow-eyed ghosts they'd been on the trail. None of it happened. Instead, there was breakfast. Hot, filling breakfast that Martha insisted on making, despite Clara's protests. There was firewood stacked high by the door each morning before Clara even woke. There was Ruth's laughter returning slowly, like spring flowers after a hard frost. And there was Emmett Cole, steady as bedrock, asking nothing and giving everything. "Your boy's got a gift." Clara looked up from the shirt she was mending, one of Emmett's torn at the elbow. He stood in the doorway, snow melting from his boots, nodding toward the window. She followed his gaze. Will was in the corral, brushing down one of the horses with careful, methodical strokes. The animal, a skittish gray mare that Martha had warned kicked strangers, stood perfectly still under his hands. "Henry taught him," Clara said softly. "Before he got sick. Will spent every morning in the barn with his father." "Shows." Emmett pulled off his gloves, moving toward the fire. "That mare ain't let nobody touch her since my ranch hand quit last fall. Your boy walked up to her like they'd known each other for years." Clara's throat tightened. "He's trying so hard to be the man of the family. He's 9 years old and he thinks his mama needs protecting." Emmett crouched by the hearth, adding a log to the flames. "He ain't wrong. He's a child. He's a child who buried his father and walked through a blizzard." Emmett stood, brushing off his hands. "That changes a person no matter how old they are." Clara set down her mending. "Is that what happened to you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Emmett went still, his back to her, and Clara immediately wished she could take it back. "I'm sorry. That was the war." His voice was quiet. "I was 19 when I enlisted. Thought I knew everything about everything." He turned to face her, and his eyes held shadows she recognized. "By the time Antietam was over, I didn't know nothing at all. Just that I wanted to survive long enough to feel the sun again. And Henry saved you. Pulled me out of a pile of bodies." Emmett's jaw tightened. "I was playing dead, hoping the rebels would pass me by. One of them didn't. Raised his bayonet, and I knew that was it. Then your husband came out of nowhere, tackled the man, took the blade in his own side." Clara pressed her hand against her chest. Henry had never told her this. Never shared the details, just the nightmares that woke him screaming for years after the war. "He carried me half a mile," Emmett continued, "bleeding the whole way. The doctors said he should have died. But Henry Sutton was too stubborn to die on a battlefield." "He was stubborn about everything," Clara's voice cracked. "Stubborn about the farm, stubborn about moving west, stubborn about—" She stopped, pressing her lips together. "About what?" "About living." The word came out broken. "He was so stubborn about living. Right up until the end he kept saying he'd beat it, that he'd get better, that he wouldn't leave us." Emmett was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the room, and to Clara's shock sat down in the chair across from her. "Pneumonia. Started as a cough, just a cough, nothing serious." Clara stared at her hands, unable to meet his eyes. "Then the fever came. Then the blood. The doctor said there was nothing to be done, but Henry wouldn't accept it. He kept getting up, kept trying to work, kept—" Her voice broke completely. "He died trying to chop wood." she whispered. Collapsed in the snow behind our cabin. Will found him. Emmett said nothing, but when Clara finally looked up, his face had changed. The careful distance he'd maintained since their arrival had cracked just slightly, revealing something raw beneath. My wife died giving birth to our son, he said quietly. Sarah. Her name was Sarah. She was 23 years old and stronger than any woman I ever knew. But the baby was turned wrong and the doctor was 3 hours away and... He stopped. Swallowed hard. The boy died in my arms an hour after her. Never even got to name him. Clara's eyes burned with tears. Emmett, I'm so sorry. It was 9 years ago. His voice was flat, controlled. I've made my peace. Have you? The question hung between them, echoing Clara's own words from before. Emmett met her gaze, and for a moment his mask slipped entirely. No, he admitted. But I've learned to carry it. Before Clara could respond, the door burst open. Ruth tumbled inside, Bonnie clutched in one hand, and something small and squirming in the other. Mama! Mama! Look, Tommy found a kitten! Behind her, Tommy appeared in the doorway. He wasn't speaking, but his eyes were brighter than Clara had seen them since Henry's death. In his arms he cradled a tiny orange tabby, its fur matted and its mewling pitiful. It was in the barn, Ruth announced. All alone. Tommy says... She stopped, realizing what she'd said. I mean, he didn't say, but he looked at me, and I knew. Ruth. Clara knelt down, touching her daughter's cheek. Slow down. Where did you find this kitten? The barn? Ruth was practically vibrating with excitement. Behind the hay. Tommy heard it crying, and he climbed up and found it. And can we keep it? Mama, please, it's so little and cold, and it doesn't have a mama just like us, and... You have a mama, Clara said gently. I know, but we don't have a papa anymore, so it's almost the same, and please, Mama, please. Clara looked at Emmett, uncertain. This was his ranch, his barn, his decision. Emmett studied Tommy, who was stroking the kitten with trembling fingers. The boy looked up and met the rancher's eyes. Something passed between them, some silent communication Clara couldn't read. Cat can stay, Emmett said finally. Barn needs a mouser anyway. Tommy's face transformed. It wasn't a smile, not quite, but it was close. He clutched the kitten tighter and looked at Clara with something she hadn't seen in weeks: hope. Thank you, Clara mouthed to Emmett over the children's heads. He nodded once and headed for the door. I'll get some milk. That cat looks half-starved. As he passed Clara, his hand brushed her shoulder. The touch was brief, almost accidental, but it sent warmth spreading through her chest. She watched him go, this rough, quiet man who'd taken in 4 strangers and asked nothing in return. And she felt something shift inside her, something she'd thought had died with Henry. Not yet, she told herself firmly. It's too soon. You're grateful, that's all. Just grateful. But when Ruth climbed into her lap, chattering about the kitten and the horses, and Mr. Emmett's dog Blue, who's the best dog in the whole world, Clara couldn't quite convince herself she was telling the truth. 2 weeks in, and the ranch had found its rhythm. Will spent his mornings with the horses, learning from Emmett how to check hooves and mend tack. Clara watched through the window as the rancher demonstrated each task with patient precision, waiting for Will to try before correcting his mistakes. He's good with him, Martha observed, appearing at Clara's elbow with a cup of coffee. Emmett, I mean. Never thought I'd see the day. What do you mean? Martha hesitated, her weathered face creasing with old sorrow. After Sarah and the baby, he closed up. Built walls so high nobody could climb them. I've been his housekeeper for 8 years, and until you folks arrived, I don't think I'd heard him speak more than 20 words in a day. Clara looked back at the corral where Emmett was showing Will how to properly lift a horse's leg. He said something, and Will laughed. Actually laughed, the sound bright and unexpected. He's different with the children, Clara said softly. "He's different with you." Martha's voice was knowing. "Don't think I haven't noticed." "I don't know what you mean." "Child, I may be old, but I ain't blind." Martha patted Clara's arm. "And I ain't saying it's wrong. Lord knows that man's been alone too long. But be careful. Hearts that have been broken don't mend easy, his or yours." She bustled off toward the kitchen, leaving Clara with her coffee and her complicated thoughts. That afternoon, Emmett taught Clara to shoot. This belonged to Henry. He turned the rifle over in his hands, examining it with a professional eye. His father's before him. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. "I've fired it a few times, tin cans mostly. I'm not very good." "Then we'll make you good." Emmett handed the rifle back. "A woman alone with 3 children needs to know how to defend herself." "I'm not alone. Clara stopped. What was she? A guest. A charity case. Something else entirely. "You're under my protection," Emmett said quietly. "But that don't mean you should be helpless. Show me your stance." She raised the rifle, settling it against her shoulder, the way Henry had taught her. Emmett moved behind her, adjusting her grip, her elbow, the angle of her body. His hands were warm through her sleeves. His chest was close enough that she could feel heat radiating from him. "You're pulling to the right." His voice was low, close to her ear. "Compensate left." Clara's heart was pounding, and it had nothing to do with the rifle. "Like this." "Better. Now breathe out slow and squeeze. Don't jerk." She fired. The can 10 yards away jumped off its fence post. "Good." Was that approval in his voice? Again. By the time the lesson was over, Clara had hit 7 out of 10 targets, and her shoulder ached from the rifle's kick. But she felt something she hadn't felt since leaving Missouri, capable, strong. "Same time tomorrow." Emmett said, not a question. "Same time tomorrow." Their eyes met held. Something crackled between them, electric and terrifying. Then Ruth's voice shattered the moment. "Mama Tommy's cat caught a mouse. A real mouse." Clara turned toward her daughter, and the spell broke. When she looked back, Emmett was already walking toward the barn, his shoulders tight. She watched him go, and wondered if he was running from the same thing she was. The first sign of trouble came 3 days later. Clara was hanging laundry when she saw it, a rider on the ridge to the east, silhouetted against the gray sky, just sitting there, watching. Her blood turned to ice. "Emmett." She didn't realize she'd spoken aloud until he appeared at her side rifle already in his hands. "I see him." "Is it?" "Can't tell from here." Emmett's voice was calm, but his body was coiled tight. "Get the children inside. Tell Martha to bar the door." "Emmett." "Now, Clara." She gathered the children with as little panic as she could manage, herding them into the house with bright false cheer. "Who wants to help Martha make bread? Tommy, you can show Ruth how to knead the dough." Martha took one look at Clara's face and understood immediately. She swept the children toward the kitchen, keeping up a stream of cheerful chatter that drowned out their questions. Clara moved to the window. Emmett was walking toward the ridge rifle loose in his hands, his stride unhurried. The rider watched him come. Then as Emmett drew closer, the figure turned and disappeared over the ridge. Clara's legs wouldn't hold her. She sank into a chair, her hands shaking so badly she had to press them between her knees. "He's gone." Emmett's voice came from the doorway. Whoever he was. Was it Floyd? Couldn't see his face, but it wasn't a rancher checking on stock. Emmett propped his rifle by the door. That man was watching the house. Clara's throat closed. "He found us. Already. We've only been here." "We don't know that." Emmett crossed to her, his boots heavy on the floor. "Could be a drifter. Could be someone from town curious about the strangers at Cole's ranch." "You don't believe that." Emmett was silent. "What do we do?" Clara heard the desperation in her own voice. "We can't run again. The children Will is finally sleeping through the night. Tommy spoke this morning, Emmett. He said cat when he fed that kitten, his first real word in a month. And Ruth, you're not running. Emmett's voice cut through her panic. This is your home now. Yours and the children's. I already told you that. But if Floyd, then he'll find out what happens when you threaten my family. The word hung in the air. Family. Clara looked up at him, her eyes wet. We're not your family, Emmett. We're strangers who showed up in a blizzard. You stopped being strangers the day Will made my horse trust him. Emmett's voice was rough. You stopped being strangers when Tommy talked to my dog. When Ruth asked me why I don't smile and then spent an hour trying to make me laugh. Clara's breath caught. I spent 9 years in this house alone. Emmett continued. 9 years eating meals by myself, going to bed in silence, waking up to nothing but emptiness. Then you came and suddenly there's noise and chaos and questions I don't know how to answer and... He stopped, jaw tight. And, Clara whispered, and I don't want to go back to the silence. He met her eyes. So, no, you're not running. And if Floyd Sutton shows his face here, I'll give him a reason to regret it. Clara stood slowly. She was trembling not from fear now, but from something else entirely. Emmett, I can't ask you to. You ain't asking. I'm telling. You could get hurt. You could... I've been hurt before. I survived. But your ranch, your life. If Floyd brings trouble, then I'll have something worth fighting for. Emmett's voice dropped. First time in 9 years. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She took a step toward him, then another. They were close now, close enough that she could see the individual threads of gray in his hair, the fine lines around his eyes. Thank you, she breathed. Don't thank me yet. But his voice had softened. Fight's not over. Then we'll fight it together. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or hope. Before either of them could speak again, Ruth's voice pierced the moment. Mama Tommy's cat is climbing the curtains. Clara laughed. She couldn't help it. The tension broke like a soap bubble. I should go. Emmett stepped back the walls, rising again but slower this time. I'll check the perimeter. Make sure our visitor didn't leave any surprises. He was out the door before Clara could respond. She watched him go, her heart still racing, and realized with sudden terrifying clarity that she was falling for Emmett Cole. It was too soon. It was too fast. Henry had been gone barely a month, but her heart, it seemed, didn't care about timing. That night the rider came back. Clara woke to Blue's barking low and urgent. She sat up in bed, heart hammering, and heard Emmett's boots on the floor outside her door. Stay here, he called through the wood. Keep the children quiet. She heard the front door open, heard the cold rush of wind, then nothing. Minutes passed. Each one felt like an hour. Then a gunshot shattered the night. Clara was out of bed before she knew she was moving. She grabbed Henry's rifle from beside the door and ran into the main room, ignoring every warning Emmett had given her. Will was already there, white-faced and shaking. Mama, get your brother and sister into the cellar, now. But, now, William. The boy ran. Clara moved to the window, rifle up, and peered into the darkness. She could see nothing, just snow and shadow and the faint glow of the barn. Emmett? She called his name before she could stop herself. Emmett. Silence. Then footsteps, and Emmett appeared from the direction of the corral. He was walking steadily, rifle in hand, but even in the dim light, Clara could see something was wrong. She ran to the door, yanking it open. Are you hurt? Grazed. He stepped inside and she saw the dark stain spreading across his left arm. Bastard was waiting by the woodpile. Got one shot off before I returned fire. Did you hit him? Winged him. Emmett's jaw was tight with controlled fury. He ran, took off east toward the ridge. Clara's hands were shaking as she helped him to a chair. Let me see. The wound was shallow, a furrow across his bicep that bled freely but hadn't hit anything vital. Clara tore a strip from her petticoat and bound it tight, while Emmett watched her with an unreadable expression. "You should have stayed inside. You should have not gotten shot." Despite everything, his mouth twitched. Fair point. Was it Floyd? Didn't get a good look. But that was a warning shot, not an assassination attempt. He wanted us to know he's here. Clara's hands stilled on the bandage. He's playing with us. That's what cowards do. They don't come straight at you. They circle, they taunt, they try to break your nerve. Is it working? Emmett looked at her, really looked, taking in her disheveled hair, her bare feet, the rifle she still clutched in her other hand. Does it look like it's working? Clara realized she was still standing over him, her fingers pressed against his injured arm, her face inches from his. She stepped back quickly, heat flooding her cheeks. The children. I should check on the children. They're in the cellar. Will took them down. Good boy. Emmett stood testing his arm with a grimace. He follows orders. That's rare in a kid his age. He's had to grow up fast. Haven't we all? Clara found the children huddled together in the cellar, Ruth crying softly while Will tried to comfort her, and Tommy sat silent, clutching his kitten. She gathered them all in her arms and held them until the shaking stopped. "Is the bad man gone?" Ruth whispered. "For now, baby, for now." "Is Mr. Emmett okay?" "He's fine, just a scratch." "Will there be more shooting?" Clara hesitated. She'd promised herself she wouldn't lie to her children, not about the important things. Henry had taught her that. "Maybe," she said finally. "But Mr. Emmett won't let anyone hurt us, and neither will I." Ruth's small hand found hers. "I'm not scared, Mama." "You're not?" "No, because Mr. Emmett said he'd protect us, and I believe him." Clara blinked back tears, out of the mouths of babes. "I believe him too, baby. I believe him too." The next morning, Emmett rode into town. "Need to talk to the sheriff," he said, saddling his horse while Clara watched. "Let him know we've got trouble coming. Marcus Holbrook and I served together, he'll want to know. What if Floyd comes while you're gone?" Emmett handed her a second rifle, a newer model than Henry's. "Then you protect your children. Martha knows what to do. And Clara?" He paused, one foot in the stirrup. "Don't hesitate. If a man comes at you with ill intent, you put him down. Worry about the rest later." "I've never shot a person." "I hope you never have to. But if the choice is between you and him..." Emmett swung into the saddle. "You choose you, every time." He was gone before she could argue. The day passed slowly, each hour stretching like taffy. Clara kept the children inside, kept the rifles loaded, kept her eyes on the horizon. Martha moved around the house with brisk efficiency, but Clara caught her checking the windows too. "He'll be back before dark," Martha said around noon. "Town's only an hour's ride. Whatever he's doing, he won't leave you unprotected longer than he has to." "I hate this." Clara's voice was raw. "Hiding in here like animals in a trap." "It ain't hiding. It's being smart." Martha set a plate of sandwiches in front of the children. "There's a difference between cowardice and caution." "Is there?" "Your husband died walking toward a fight he couldn't win." Martha's voice softened. "That was brave, but it was also foolish. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is wait." Clara thought about Henry collapsed in the snow with an axe in his hand, too stubborn to admit he was dying. She thought about the children who'd found him, about Will's screams and Tommy's silence. "I'm tired of waiting," she whispered. "I'm tired of being afraid." "Then use that." Martha's eyes were sharp. "Fear can be a weapon too. Makes you careful, makes you smart. The only people who ain't afraid are the ones too stupid to understand the danger." Before Clara could respond, the sound of hoofbeats cut through the air. She grabbed her rifle and ran to the window, heart in her throat. But it was Emmett riding hard up the path, his face grim. She met him at the door. What happened? Floyd's in town. The words hit Clara like a punch to the stomach. What? Rode in this morning pretty as you please, told everyone he was looking for his poor sister-in-law widow of his dear departed brother who'd run off in grief and confusion. Emmett's voice was bitter. Made himself out to be the concerned family member just wanting to help. And they believed him. Some did. Floyd's good at playing the gentleman when it suits him. Emmett pulled off his gloves, his movements sharp with controlled anger. But Sheriff Holbrook knows better. He served with Henry, briefly remembered him as a good man. Said he'd keep an eye on Floyd, make sure he doesn't cause trouble in town. But he can't stop him from coming here. No. Emmett met her eyes. He can't. Clara's legs felt weak. She sank into a chair, the rifle still clutched in her hands. How long do we have? Hard to say. Floyd's playing a game, making himself look respectable before he makes his move. Could be days. Could be weeks. Or could be tonight. Could be tonight. Emmett agreed. Clara looked around the room at Ruth playing with Tommy's kitten, at Tommy stroking Blue's ears at will, pretending to read, but really watching the adults with those two old eyes. I won't let him take them. Her voice was steel. I won't. Neither will I. Emmett crouched beside her chair, his face level with hers. Clara, listen to me. Whatever happens, those children will not fall into Floyd Sutton's hands. You have my word. What if it comes to a fight? Then we fight. You could die. I could. He didn't flinch. But I'd rather die protecting something that matters than live alone in that silence one more day. Clara's eyes burned. Emmett. You gave me a reason to live again, he said quietly. You and those children. I'm not letting Floyd take that away. Before Clara could respond, Ruth appeared at her elbow. Mama Tommy's cat is hungry. Can I feed it? Clara wiped her eyes quickly, forcing a smile. Of course, baby. There's milk in the kitchen. Ruth scampered off and Clara turned back to Emmett, but the moment had passed. His walls were up again, his expression carefully neutral. I'll take first watch tonight, he said, standing. You get some sleep. Emmett. We'll talk more tomorrow. Right now, you need rest. He headed for the door, then paused. Clara. Yes. Whatever happens. He stopped, seemed to wrestle with himself. I'm glad you came, blizzard and all. He was gone before she could answer. Clara sat alone in the firelight, the rifle across her lap, and thought about second chances. About grief and healing, and the terrifying possibility of loving again. And she realized with a clarity that shook her to her core that she wasn't just falling for Emmett Cole. She'd already fallen. The third week brought something unexpected: normalcy. Floyd didn't appear. No more riders on the ridge, no more shots in the dark. The snow fell and melted and fell again, and life on the ranch settled into a rhythm that felt almost like peace. Will was learning to ride properly now, Emmett letting him take the gray mare around the corral while calling out instructions. Heels down, shoulders back. Don't death grip the reins, she can feel your tension. Clara watched from the porch, coffee warming her hands, and marveled at the change in her son. The hard mask he'd worn since Henry's death was softening. He smiled now, laughed sometimes, complained about chores the way a normal 9-year-old should. Tommy was talking more too. Short words, simple sentences, but each one felt like a victory. Cat hungry. Blue's good dog. More please. The day he said thank you Mr. Emmett after dinner, Clara had to leave the room so no one would see her cry. And Ruth was thriving. She'd adopted Emmett as a personal project, determined to make him smile at least once a day. She told him jokes, showed him drawings, forced him to have tea parties with her and Bonnie and the kitten now named Marmalade because of his color. Mr. Emmett doesn't know how to smile proper, Ruth confided to Clara one afternoon. But I'm teaching him. Are you? Yep. Yesterday I told him the one about the chicken in the road and his mouth went like this. Ruth demonstrated a barely perceptible lip twitch. That's almost a smile. I'm making progress. Clara laughed. Really laughed, the sound surprising her. I think you are baby. She was still smiling when Emmett came in from the barn, stomping snow from his boots. He caught her expression and raised an eyebrow. Something funny. Ruth's been telling me about her smile lessons. Emmett's face did that almost twitch thing again. That child is relentless. She gets it from her father. Clara's smile faded slightly. Henry never knew when to quit either. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. They'd developed a language of silences over the past weeks. This one said, I'm sorry, and I understand, and I'm here. I've been thinking, Emmett said finally. About after. Clara's heart lurched. After Floyd's dealt with. After the dangers passed. He moved to the fire, not looking at her. You and the children, you should stay. We are staying. You said, I mean permanently. Now he did look at her, and his eyes held something she'd never seen before, vulnerability. Not as guests, not as charity, as... He stopped, jaw working. As what? Clara whispered. As family. The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Clara's hands trembled. She set down her coffee before she dropped it. Emmett, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm too old and too broken to court you proper. His voice was rough. I'm saying I don't have pretty words or romantic gestures. I'm saying I've buried one wife already and I swore I'd never go through that again. But you walked through a blizzard for those children. You held a gun and promised to protect them. You smile at me like I'm still worth smiling at even after everything. He took a breath. And I find myself thinking about tomorrow in a way I haven't thought about tomorrow in 9 years. Clara stood. Her legs were shaking, but they held. What are you asking me? I'm not asking yet. Emmett held up a hand. Floyd's still out there. You've got enough to worry about without me adding to it. He stopped, frustrated. I needed you to know that when this is over, if you want to leave, I'll help you any way I can. But if you want to stay, if you want to build something here, I'm willing. I'm more than willing. Emmett Cole. Clara's voice was steadier than she felt. Are you trying to propose to me? I'm trying to tell you I love you. The words came out like they'd been dragged from him by force. I'm trying to tell you that watching you with those children makes my chest ache in a way I thought I'd forgotten. I'm trying to tell you that for the first time since Sarah died, I can imagine a future that isn't just empty years stacked on empty years. Clara closed the distance between them. She reached up, touching his scarred face with gentle fingers. Then say it plain. Clara Sutton. His voice was barely a whisper. When this is over, will you marry me? She smiled, and this time he smiled back. A real smile, not the almost twitch Ruth had been celebrating, but a full, genuine expression of joy. Ask me again when Floyd's gone, she said softly, and I'll give you an answer. Is that a yes? That's a let's survive first. She pressed her palm against his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her fingers. But I'll tell you this much. Emmett Cole, I haven't felt hope like this since before Henry got sick. You gave that to me. You and this ranch and the way you look at my children like they matter. They do matter. I know. Tears slipped down her cheeks. And so do you. He kissed her. It was soft and careful and tasted like promise. Clara melted into it, letting herself really feel for the first time in months. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Well, Ruth's voice piped up from the doorway. I guess the smile lessons worked. Clara spun around, face flaming. Ruth stood there with Tommy beside her, both children grinning like cats who'd gotten into the cream. How long have you been there? Long enough. Ruth bounced on her heels. Are you and Mr. Emmett getting married? Can I be the flower girl? Tommy can carry the rings. He's very careful with things. Emmett cleared his throat. We haven't, that is your mama and I. We'll talk about it later, Clara managed. Right now, I need you both to go wash up for dinner. But Mama. Now Ruth. The children scampered off giggling. Clara buried her face in her hands. They saw us. Yep. Will's going to find out. Probably already knows. That boy doesn't miss much. Clara peeked through her fingers. Emmett was watching her with an expression caught between amusement and terror. This is going to be complicated, she said. It was always going to be complicated. He pulled her hands away from her face. But I reckon complicated is better than lonely. Is that your idea of romance? I told you I didn't have pretty words. Clara laughed, and he kissed her again, and for one perfect moment, she forgot about Floyd Sutton and danger and all the uncertainty that lay ahead. Then the front door burst open, and Caleb, the young ranch hand, stumbled inside, gasping for breath. Mr. Cole, riders coming from the east. Least 3 of them, maybe more. The moment shattered. Emmett grabbed his rifle from beside the door. Get the children to the cellar, he ordered Clara. Now. And just like that, the piece was over. Clara didn't think. She moved. Will. Her voice cut through the house. Get your brother and sister. Cellar. Now. Will appeared from the bedroom, already pulling Tommy by the hand. The boy's eyes were wide, but he didn't argue. 9 years old, and he understood exactly what those hoofbeats meant. Ruth, come here. Clara scooped up her daughter, ignoring the child's startled cry. We're going downstairs, baby, just like we practiced. But Mama Marmalade. Tommy has him. Move. She herded the children toward the trap door, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Behind her, she heard Emmett checking his rifle, heard Martha pulling the shutters closed. How many? Emmett called to Caleb. 3 for sure, maybe 4, coming fast. Armed? Couldn't tell, but they ain't slowing down. Clara lifted the trapdoor and started lowering the children into the darkness below. Will went first, then helped Tommy down. Ruth clung to Clara's neck. I don't want to go in the dark, Mama. I know, baby, but you have to be brave. Can you be brave for me? Ruth's lower lip trembled. Like a badger. Clara's throat closed. Emmett's words coming back from her daughter's mouth. Exactly like a badger. She handed Ruth down to Will and turned to find Emmett standing behind her. Stay with them. He pressed a pistol into her hands. Don't come out until you hear my voice or mine. Not for anything. Emmett, promise me. His eyes burned into hers. Clara saw fear there, real fear, but not for himself. I promise. He kissed her hard and fast, then pushed her toward the cellar. Go. Clara dropped into the darkness and pulled the trapdoor shut above her. She heard boots scrape across it, heard the rug being dragged into place, then silence. The cellar was cold and black. Clara gathered her children against her, feeling their small bodies tremble. It's okay, she whispered. We're safe here. Emmett won't let anyone hurt us. What about Mr. Emmett? Will's voice was tight. What if they hurt him? Clara didn't have an answer for that. She just held her children tighter and listened to the sounds above their heads. Footsteps. Voices too muffled to make out words. Then the creak of the front door opening. Mr. Cole? A voice she didn't recognize, smooth and cold. Appreciate you coming out to meet us. You're on private property. Emmett's voice hard as iron. State your business and move along. Oh, I think you know my business. A different voice now, and this one Clara did recognize. Floyd. Her blood turned to ice. She pressed her hand over Ruth's mouth before the child could make a sound. Got a family matter to attend to, Floyd continued. My dear departed brother's widow seems to have gotten herself lost. Confused by grief, poor thing. Took off with my nieces and nephew before we could discuss proper arrangements. Don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, Mr. Cole. Floyd's voice hardened. I've got 3 witnesses saw a woman matching Clara's description ride into this ranch a month ago. Woman with 3 children and not much else. Lots of travelers pass through. Can't keep track of them all. That's so. A pause. Then you won't mind if my boys take a look around, just to ease my mind. I mind plenty. Emmett's voice dropped to something dangerous. This is my land. You want to search it, you bring a warrant. Until then, you and your boys can turn those horses around and ride back the way you came. Now, Mr. Cole, I ain't finished. Clara heard the click of a rifle being cocked. You've got about 10 seconds to get off my property. After that, I start shooting trespassers. Silence. Long, terrible silence. Then Floyd laughed. The sound made Clara's skin crawl. You've got sand, Cole. I'll give you that. His voice turned pleasant, almost friendly. But here's the thing. Clara Sutton is family. Those children are family. And in this territory, family takes care of family. Those children had a father. He died. That's tragedy, not opportunity. Henry Sutton owed me money. Floyd's mask slipped, revealing the ugliness beneath. Owed me plenty. And since he can't pay his widow will, one way or another. She doesn't owe you a damn thing. That's where you're wrong. Footsteps moving closer. See, I've got papers. Legal documents all signed proper. Henry borrowed against his land, and when he died, that debt transferred to his wife. Which means Clara Sutton belongs to me until that debt is paid. Her and everything she owns. Clara's stomach heaved. Papers. Floyd had papers. She'd never seen them, never known about any debt. Had Henry known? Henry would have told her. This was a lie. It had to be a lie. I've got a lawyer in town says different, Emmett replied. Says a widow can't be held for her husband's debts unless she signed for them herself. Did Clara sign anything? Silence. That's what I thought. Emmett's voice was ice. Now get off my land. This isn't over, Cole. It is for today. Tomorrow, next week, next month, you come back here with those fake papers and those hired guns, and I'll be waiting. And I won't be alone. You think that Tin Star Sheriff is going to help you, Marcus Holbrook, and I go way back. He knows which side his bread is buttered on. Maybe. But I've got friends too. Men who fought beside me in the war. Men who don't take kindly to cowards who threaten women and children. Emmett paused. You really want to find out how many I can call on? Another long silence. Clara held her breath, her arms aching from holding her children so tightly. Then Floyd spoke, his voice dripping with false sweetness. You've got 1 week, Cole. 1 week to hand over Clara and those children peacefully. After that, I'm coming back with enough men to burn this ranch to the ground. You're welcome to try. Hoofbeats, fading into the distance. The sound of the front door closing. Clara waited. Minutes passed like hours. Then 3 sharp knocks on the trap door, the signal they'd agreed on. She pushed it open, blinking against the sudden light. Emmett's face appeared above her, tense but uninjured. They're gone, for now. Clara climbed out, then helped the children up one by one. Ruth immediately ran to Emmett and threw her arms around his legs. I was scared, she said, her voice muffled against his thigh. But I was brave like a badger. Something cracked in Emmett's expression. He crouched down and pulled Ruth into a proper hug, the first time Clara had seen him initiate physical affection with any of the children. You were very brave, he said gruffly. All of you. Will stood rigid, his hands clenched into fists. What happens now? That man said he was coming back. He is. Emmett released Ruth and straightened. Which means we've got a week to prepare. Prepare for what? Emmett's eyes met Clara's over Will's head. The look they shared said everything. For war, Emmett said quietly. We prepare for war. The next morning, Emmett rode out before dawn. Clara watched him go from the bedroom window, her heart in her throat. He'd told her where he was going to gather allies, men he'd served with ranchers who owed him favors, but that didn't make the waiting any easier. "He'll come back." Martha appeared at her elbow with coffee. "That man's too stubborn to die before he's ready." "I know." Clara accepted the cup with trembling hands. "But Floyd's not going to stop. You heard what he said. He's got papers claims Henry owed him money. Papers can be forged. Claims can be lies." Martha's voice was firm. "Did your husband ever mention owing Floyd anything?" "No. Never." Clara frowned, trying to remember. Henry didn't like Floyd. Called him a snake in a suit. Said his own mother didn't trust him. "There you go then. Whatever Floyd's waving around, it ain't legitimate. But if a judge believes him, then Emmett will find a better judge." Martha patted her arm. "Stop borrowing trouble, child. We've got enough on our plate for today." Clara tried to follow that advice. She kept the children busy with chores. Will mucking out the stalls, Tommy feeding the chickens, Ruth helping Martha in the kitchen. Normal tasks, normal routines. As if there wasn't a storm building on the horizon. But her mind wouldn't stop racing. What if Floyd came back before Emmett returned? What if his papers convinced the sheriff? What if Emmett's friends refused to help? What if Mama? Will's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Someone's coming." Clara grabbed her rifle and ran to the window. But it wasn't Floyd. It was Emmett riding hard up the path with 3 other men behind him. Relief flooded through her, so intense her knees buckled. She leaned against the wall, breathing hard, and watched as Emmett dismounted and turned to greet his companions. The first man was older, grizzled, and scarred with the bearing of someone who'd spent his life in the saddle. The second was younger, maybe 30, with a quick smile and sharp eyes. The third was massive, taller than Emmett, and twice as broad with hands like dinner plates. Emmett said something Clara couldn't hear, and all 3 men nodded. Then they headed for the house. Clara met them at the door. "Clara, this is Jesse Whitmore." Emmett nodded at the older man. "We served together at Antietam. He's got a ranch 20 miles north." Jesse tipped his hat. "Ma'am? And this is Daniel Crow." The younger man grinned at her. "Best tracker in the territory. If Floyd's got men watching the place, Daniel will find them." "Pleasure, ma'am." "And this?" Emmett gestured at the giant. "This is Solomon Burke. Solomon doesn't say much, but he doesn't need to." Solomon nodded once, his expression unreadable. "There are 3 more coming," Emmett continued. "Should arrive by nightfall. Plus, Sheriff Holbrook promised to ride out tomorrow with a couple deputies." Clara stared at him. "All these people, for us, for you." Emmett's voice softened. "I told you I had friends, Clara. Men who understand what it means to protect what matters. But we're strangers to them." Jesse snorted. "You ain't strangers, ma'am. You're Emmett Cole's family. That makes you our family, too." He glanced at Emmett with something like amusement. "Besides, we've been waiting years for this stubborn fool to find something worth fighting for. Ain't about to let him face it alone." Clara's eyes burned. She turned away, pressing her hand against her mouth. "Ma'am?" Daniel stepped forward, concern on his face. "You all right?" "I'm fine." Her voice was thick. I'm not used to people helping. Not without wanting something in return." "Then you've been dealing with the wrong people." Jesse's voice was gruff, but kind. "Now where's this kitchen I've heard about? Man can't fight on an empty stomach." Martha appeared, already ushering the men inside. Come on. I've got coffee and biscuits, and there's stew on for supper. You'll need your strength for whatever foolishness Emmett's planning." Clara caught Emmett's arm as he passed. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." But his eyes were warm. "We've still got a fight ahead." "I know." She squeezed his arm. "But for the first time, I feel like we might actually win." That evening, after the children were in bed and the men had settled into the barn, Emmett found Clara on the porch. She was staring at the stars, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. He sat down beside her close enough that their arms touched. Can't sleep. My mind won't stop. Clara kept her eyes on the sky. I keep thinking about Henry. About what Floyd said. The debt? Yes. She finally looked at him. What if it's true? What if Henry did owe him money and never told me? Emmett was quiet for a moment. Would it change anything? No. The answer came immediately. Floyd's not taking my children. I don't care what papers he has. Then it doesn't matter. Emmett reached over and took her hand. Henry's debts died with Henry, and even if they didn't, Floyd's got no claim to you or those children. The law might be murky, but some things are clear as day. What things? A man who has to threaten and bully to get what he wants isn't a man who's got right on his side. Emmett's voice hardened. Floyd Sutton is a coward and a bully, and come next week, he's going to learn what happens to cowards who push too hard. Clara leaned against his shoulder. I'm scared, Emmett. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Aren't you scared? He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I'm scared of losing you. After 9 years of nothing, I finally found something worth holding on to. The thought of Floyd taking that away. He stopped, jaw tight. He won't. Clara turned to face him, taking his face in her hands. Whatever happens, Emmett, he won't. Because you're not alone in this. I'm not some helpless widow waiting to be rescued. I can shoot. I can fight. And I will die before I let that man touch my children. Clara, promise me something. Anything. If something happens to me, she held up a hand when he started to protest. If something happens, you take care of them. Will, Tommy, Ruth, you raise them like they're your own. Clara, nothing's going to... Promise me. He stared at her, his eyes glistening in the starlight. I promise. Good. She kissed him soft and slow. Now let's go inside. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. The reinforcements arrived over the next 3 days. First came 2 brothers named Marcus and Luke, ranchers from the East Valley who'd fought with Emmett at Gettysburg. Then a quiet man named Thomas who walked with a limp but could shoot the eye out of a bird at 100 yards. Finally, Sheriff Holbrook rode in with 3 deputies, all of them grim-faced and heavily armed. By the 4th day, Cole Ranch had transformed into a fortress. Men patrolled the perimeter in shifts. Rifles were positioned at every window. The children had strict orders to stay inside, and the cellar was stocked with enough supplies to last a week. You think he'll really come? Clara asked Emmett as they watched Daniel return from another scouting run. He'll come. Men like Floyd don't back down. It's a point of pride. What if he brings more men than we can handle? Then we'll handle them anyway. Emmett's voice was calm. We've got position, we've got cover, and we've got men who know how to fight. Floyd's got hired guns who are only loyal as long as they're getting paid. And if his men are better than you think, Emmett turned to look at her, then I'll make sure you and the children get out. There's a tunnel beneath the cellar old escape route from when this place was a way station. It comes out near the creek about 100 yards east. If things go bad, you take the children and you run. I won't leave you. You will if I tell you to. Emmett, those children need their mother. His voice was fierce. I've already lost one family, Clara. I won't lose another because you were too stubborn to run when you had the chance. Clara opened her mouth to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't negotiable. This was the one thing he wouldn't bend on. Fine, she said finally, but it won't come to that. I hope you're right. The 5th night, Tommy had a nightmare. Clara woke to his screams, wordless, terrified sounds that tore through the darkness. She was out of bed before she fully registered moving, running to the children's room. Tommy was thrashing in the bed, his small body tangled in the blankets. Will was already there, trying to hold him still. "He won't wake up," Will's voice cracked. "Mama, I can't wake him up." Clara gathered Tommy in her arms, rocking him, whispering soothing nonsense into his ear. "It's okay, baby. Mama's here. You're safe. It's just a dream." Slowly, agonizingly, the screaming faded. Tommy's eyes fluttered open, wild and unfocused. "Papa." His voice was tiny, broken. "Papa's gone." Clara's heart shattered. "I know, baby. I know." "The bad man came and took him away." "No, sweetheart. Papa got sick. The bad man didn't." "He did." Tommy's voice rose. "I saw him. In my dream, the bad man came and took Papa, and now he's going to take you and—" "No one's taking me." Clara held him tighter. "No one's taking anyone. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Ruth appeared in the doorway, clutching Bonnie. "Mama, what's wrong with Tommy?" "Nothing, baby. Just a bad dream. Go back to bed." "I don't want to." Ruth's lower lip trembled. "I'm scared too." Clara held out her arm, and Ruth climbed onto the bed, pressing against her side. Will hesitated, then joined them, wrapping his arm around Tommy. They stayed like that, all four of them tangled together, until Tommy's breathing finally evened out. "Mama," Will whispered into the darkness. "Is the bad man coming?" Clara closed her eyes. "Yes." "Are we going to be okay?" She thought about lying, thought about offering false comfort. But Will was 9 years old and had already lost his father. He deserved the truth. "I don't know," she admitted. "But we're going to fight, and we're not alone. Mr. Emmett will protect us. He'll try, and so will I. I can fight too." Will's voice was fierce. "Mr. Emmett taught me to shoot. I can help. Your job is to protect your brother and sister." Clara touched his cheek. "If things go bad, you get them to the tunnel and you run. That's the most important job of all." "But what about you?" "I'll be right behind you." It was a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. But Will nodded, accepting it, and Clara held her children until sleep finally claimed them. She didn't close her own eyes until dawn. Day 6. 1 day left. The ranch was quiet, tense. Everyone felt it, the approaching storm, the weight of what was coming. Even the animals seemed restless, the horses stamping and the chickens refusing to leave their coops. Clara found Emmett by the corral, checking his rifle for the 100th time. "How are you?" she asked. "Ready." He didn't look up. "Question is, how are you terrified?" She moved to stand beside him. "And angry, and tired of waiting. Tomorrow it ends, one way or another. You sound confident." "I've been in battles before. The waiting's always the worst part." He finally met her eyes. "Once the shooting starts, there's no time for fear, just action and reaction." "That doesn't make me feel better." "It wasn't supposed to." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Clara, whatever happens tomorrow, don't." She caught his hand. "Don't say goodbye." "Not yet." "I wasn't going to say goodbye." His voice was rough. "I was going to say I love you. I know it's not the right time, and I know we haven't known each other long, but—" Clara kissed him, hard, desperate, pouring everything she couldn't say into that one moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. "I love you too," she breathed. "And when this is over, I'm going to marry you. I'm going to stand up in front of God and everyone and promise to spend the rest of my life making you smile." Emmett laughed, actually laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. "Ruth will be pleased. Ruth will be insufferable. She'll take all the credit. Probably should. That child is relentless." They stood together in the fading light, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. Tomorrow, Floyd would come. Tomorrow, blood would be spilled. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, there was this. Two broken people holding on to each other, finding strength in the connection, daring to hope for a future they might never see. "Stay with me tonight," Clara whispered. "I don't want to be alone." Emmett took her hand. "You're never going to be alone again." The seventh day dawned cold and gray. Clara woke with Emmett beside her, his arm heavy across her waist. For one perfect moment, she let herself pretend. Pretend there was no Floyd, no danger, no fight ahead, just this man, and this bed, and the promise of a future. Then reality crashed back in. "They're coming." Daniel's voice cut through the morning sharp and urgent. "Riders on the East Ridge, at least a dozen." Emmett was up and moving before Clara fully processed the words. She scrambled after him, grabbing her rifle, checking the chamber. "Children," she called. "Cellar, now!" Will appeared already dressed, already holding Tommy's hand. Ruth clutched Bonnie with one arm and Marmalade with the other. "I want to stay with you, Mama," Ruth whimpered. "I know, baby." Clara knelt down, looking into her daughter's eyes. "But I need you to be brave one more time. Can you do that? Can you go with Will and Tommy and wait for me?" "What if you don't come?" Clara's throat closed. "Then Will knows what to do, but I will come. I promise you, Ruth. No matter what happens up here, I will come for you." She kissed each of her children, Will's forehead, Tommy's cheek, Ruth's tangled hair, and watched them disappear into the cellar. Then she turned to face what was coming. The riders crested the ridge like a wave of darkness. Clara counted them as they approached. 12. No 14. More than Emmett had expected. Floyd led the pack, sitting tall in his saddle, a satisfied smile on his face. "Cole," his voice carried across the distance. "Brought some friends. Hope you don't mind." "Your funeral." Emmett stood on the porch, rifle in hand, flanked by Jesse and Solomon. "You want to ride back now? I'll let you. One-time offer." Floyd laughed. "You're outnumbered, Cole. Look around. You've got, 10 men? I've got 14. And more coming if I need them. Then I guess we'll see who's left standing." Floyd's smile faded. "Last chance. Hand over Clara and the children, and nobody has to die. Over my dead body. That can be arranged." The first shot shattered the morning silence. Clara hit the floor as the window exploded above her head. Glass rained down sharp and glittering. She rolled, came up with her rifle, and fired through the shattered frame without thinking. Somewhere outside, a man screamed, "Stay down!" Emmett's voice cut through the chaos. He was at the next window, firing methodically, each shot finding a target. The noise was deafening. Gunfire from every direction, men shouting, horses screaming. Clara's ears rang, her hands shook, but she kept shooting, kept moving, kept breathing. "They're flanking left," Jesse shouted from the back of the house. "3 of them coming around the barn." "I got it." Daniel disappeared through the kitchen, rifle in hand. Clara pressed her back against the wall, ejecting spent shells and reloading. Her fingers felt clumsy, too slow. How long had they been fighting? Minutes, hours. "Clara?" Martha grabbed her arm. "You're bleeding." She looked down. Blood soaked her sleeve, a long gash from flying glass. She hadn't even felt it. "It's nothing." Clara pulled away. "Keep your head down." Another volley of shots. Solomon grunted, clutching his shoulder, but didn't stop firing. The big man's face was a mask of controlled fury. "They're pulling back," Will's voice carried from the cellar hatch. "I can see through the crack they're pulling back." "Get back down!" Clara screamed. "William Henry Sutton, get down now!" The hatch slammed shut. Emmett appeared at her side, breathing hard. "They're regrouping. Won't be long before they try again." "How many did we get?" 4, maybe 5. His jaw was tight. "But they've still got numbers on us." "The barn," Clara pointed. "If they set it on fire." "I know." Emmett's eyes were dark. That's probably the plan. Smoke us out. As if on cue, Clara smelled it. Smoke. Faint at first, then stronger. "They're burning the hay stores!" Caleb shouted from somewhere outside. "The whole east side's going up." Clara's stomach dropped. The tunnel, the escape route. It came out near the barn. "The children!" Her voice cracked. "If the fire spreads, it won't." Emmett grabbed her shoulders. "The cellar's stone. They're safe there. But the tunnel? We'll get to them before it comes to that." His eyes burned into hers. "I promise." A bullet tore through the wall inches from Clara's head. She dropped, heart hammering, and came up shooting. "Emmett." Jesse's voice was urgent. "We've got a problem." Clara followed Emmett to the back of the house. Through the shattered window, she could see the barn fully engulfed, now flames reaching toward the sky. And moving through the smoke using it as cover were at least 6 men. "They're coming around," Jesse said grimly, "trying to hit us from both sides." "How many bullets we got left?" "Enough." But Jesse's face said otherwise. Emmett made a decision. "Jesse Solomon, take the back. Don't let them through. Daniel Marcus, hold the front. Everyone else fall back to the main room." "What about the children?" Clara grabbed his arm. "We can't leave them in the cellar with the fire." "I'll get them." Emmett pressed his rifle into her hands. "You hold this position. Don't let anyone through that door. Emmett, I'll bring them back." He kissed her fierce and fast. "I swear to you, Clara, I'll bring them back." Then he was gone, disappearing through the smoke toward the cellar hatch. Clara positioned herself in front of the main room door, her heart in her throat. Behind her, Martha crouched near the fireplace, clutching a pistol she barely knew how to use. Through the windows, she could see shadows moving in the smoke. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, Emmett." A figure appeared in the doorway. Clara raised her rifle finger, tightening on the trigger. "Don't shoot." Daniel stumbled inside, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "They breached the east wall. Luke's down. Dead. Don't know. Couldn't get to him." Clara's stomach lurched. Luke. One of the brothers who'd ridden so far to help people he'd never met. "Where's Marcus?" "Holding the front. But he can't." Gunfire erupted from outside, followed by a scream that cut off abruptly. "Marcus!" Daniel ran for the door, but Clara caught him. "Wait. You go out there blind, you're dead." "But..." "Listen to me." Clara's voice was steel. "Emmett's getting the children. We hold this room until he's back. That's the only thing that matters." Daniel stared at her chest, heaving. Then he nodded. "Where do you want me?" "That window." Clara pointed. "Anything comes through, you put it down." She moved to the opposite window, scanning the smoke for movement. The fire was spreading now, not just the barn, but the fencing around the corral. Soon, it would reach the house. They were running out of time. "Clara!" She spun. Emmett burst through the cellar hatch, Ruth in his arms, Tommy clinging to his leg. Behind them came Will, clutching Marmalade against his chest. "Go!" Emmett shoved them toward Clara. "Tunnel's compromised. We can't get out that way." Clara gathered her children, her heart breaking with relief. "Are you hurt? Any of you?" "We're okay, Mama." Will's voice shook, but held steady. "The tunnel was full of smoke. We couldn't breathe." "It's okay, baby. You're safe now." But they weren't safe. Clara knew it. They all knew it. "Emmett." Floyd's voice rang out from somewhere in the smoke. "This doesn't have to be hard. Send out Clara and the children, and I'll let the rest of you live." "Go to hell!" Clara screamed before she could stop herself. Floyd laughed. "There she is, spirited as ever." His voice turned cold. "Henry always did like them with some fight. Shame he couldn't keep you in line." "You're not fit to speak his name." "His name?" Floyd's laugh was ugly. "His name don't mean nothing anymore. Your husband was a weak fool who couldn't protect his own family. Just like Cole here. Just like..." A shot rang out. Floyd's voice cut off with a curse. That was a warning, Emmett called. Next one goes between your eyes. Silence. Then Floyd spoke again, all pretense of civility gone. Burn it. Burn it all. Clara watched in horror as torches arced through the air, landing on the porch against the walls. Within seconds, flames began to lick at the wooden siding. We have to get out, Martha said, her voice thin with fear. We'll burn alive in here. The front door. Jesse appeared, Solomon limping beside him. It's our only chance. They'll cut us down the moment we step outside, Daniel said. Maybe not all of us. Emmett's voice was quiet. Someone draws their fire. The rest get the children to the creek. No. Clara knew what he was suggesting. Absolutely not. Clara. You're not sacrificing yourself. Her voice broke. I won't let you. It's not about letting. Emmett's eyes met hers, and she saw acceptance there. Resolve. Those children need their mother. You promised them you'd come for them. I'm making sure you can keep that promise. And what about your promise? Tears streamed down Clara's face. You promised me a future. You promised we'd get married. You promised... I promised I'd protect you. His voice cracked. This is me protecting you. Emmett, please. Ruth tugged at Clara's skirt. Mama, what's happening? Why is Mr. Emmett sad? Clara looked down at her daughter, at her brave, innocent daughter who'd been through so much already, and felt something inside her harden. Nobody's sacrificing anything. She wiped her face and raised her rifle. We're all getting out of here. Together. Clara, the odds. Damn the odds. She turned to face the men gathered in the smoky room. You came here to help us. All of you. You risked your lives for people you'd never met. And I am not going to let any of you die today. She pointed at the door. We go out together. Fast and low. Solomon, you carry Ruth. Jesse, you've got Tommy. Will stays with me. Daniel, you and Emmett cover us. And if they're waiting, Jesse asked, then we make them sorry they came. Clara looked at Emmett, challenging him to argue. He stared at her for a long moment, something like wonder in his eyes. You heard the lady, he said finally. Move. They burst through the door like a storm. Clara fired as she ran, not aiming, just laying down cover. Beside her, Will pumped his short legs as fast as they could go, Marmalade still clutched against his chest. Bullets sang past her ears. Someone shouted. Glass shattered. But Clara kept moving, kept shooting, kept pushing forward. The creek, Emmett yelled. Head for the creek. They were halfway there when Will stumbled. Clara spun, her heart stopping. Her son was on the ground, blood on his face, Marmalade yowling in terror. Will... She ran back, heedless of the bullets, and grabbed his arm. Get up! Get up! My leg. Will's voice was thin with pain. Something hit my leg. Clara looked down. Blood soaked his trouser leg, a bullet hole through the flesh of his calf. Not bone, thank God. But he couldn't run. I've got him! Emmett appeared out of nowhere, scooping Will into his arms. Keep moving! They ran. Clara's lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But she could see the tree line now, could see the rocky outcrop that would give them cover. Just a little further. Just a little. The shot came from nowhere. Emmett jerked, stumbled, went down hard. Will tumbled from his arms. No! Clara's scream tore from her throat. She dropped to her knees beside Emmett, hands pressing against the wound in his side. Blood pulsed between her fingers, hot and red. Go! Emmett's voice was weak. Take the children, and... I'm not leaving you. Clara. I said no. She pressed harder, willing the bleeding to stop. You don't get to die on me, Emmett Cole. Not after everything. Not after... Well. Floyd's voice came from behind her. Isn't this touching? Clara turned slowly, keeping herself between Floyd and Emmett. The man stood 10 feet away, pistol leveled at her chest. Behind him, 2 of his hired guns held rifles trained on the tree line where the others had taken cover with the children. "You've led me on quite a chase, Clara." Floyd smiled, and it was the ugliest thing she'd ever seen. "But it's over now." "It's not over." Clara's voice shook, but she didn't lower her gaze. "You'll never have me. You'll never have my children." "I beg to differ." Floyd stepped closer. "Your protector's bleeding out in the dirt. Your friends are pinned down. And those papers I mentioned, a judge in Laramie already signed off on them. Legally, Clara, you belong to me." "I don't belong to anyone." "That's where you're wrong." Floyd reached out to touch her face. Clara moved. The knife, Henry's knife, the one she'd kept strapped to her thigh since Missouri, sliced across Floyd's gun hand. He screamed, the pistol falling, and Clara lunged. They went down together, rolling in the dirt. Floyd was bigger, stronger, but Clara had something he didn't. She was fighting for her children. She clawed at his eyes, his throat, anywhere she could reach. Floyd caught her wrist, twisting hard enough to make her cry out, but she didn't stop fighting. "Stupid woman!" Floyd's bloody hand closed around her throat. "You could have had a comfortable life. I would have treated you." Clara spat in his face. His grip tightened, and stars exploded behind her eyes. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the pressure building in her skull. "This is it," she thought. "This is how I die." Then a gunshot, and Floyd's body jerked. His grip loosened. Clara sucked in a desperate breath as he slumped sideways, a bullet hole in his chest. She looked up. Will stood 5 feet away, Emmett's pistol trembling in his small hands. His face was white as bone, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I had to, Mama." His voice cracked. "He was hurting you. I had to." Clara crawled to her son and pulled him into her arms. The pistol fell to the ground between them. "You saved me," she whispered into his hair. "You saved us all." Behind them, Floyd Sutton twitched once and went still. "Clara." Emmett's voice was weak. "The others." She turned. Floyd's hired guns were scattering their employer dead, their pay meaningless. Jesse and the others emerged from cover, rounding up the ones too slow to run. It was over. Clara stumbled back to Emmett, falling to her knees beside him. The wound in his side was bad, but the bleeding had slowed. He was pale, shaking, but his eyes were open. "You're going to be fine," she said fiercely. "You hear me? You're going to be fine." "Clara." "Doc Webb's coming. Sheriff Holbrook will bring him. You just have to hold on." "I'm not—" Emmett coughed, wincing. "I'm not going anywhere." "You better not." Tears blurred her vision. "Because I still need to marry you." Despite everything, the blood, the pain, the chaos around them, Emmett smiled. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes." Clara kissed his forehead, his cheeks, his lips. "That's a yes, you stubborn, wonderful, infuriating man." "Mama!" Ruth's small voice came from behind her. Solomon had set the little girl down, and she was toddling toward them. Bonnie clutched in her arms. "Is Mr. Emmett going to be okay?" Clara looked at her daughter, at Tommy peeking out from behind Jesse, at Will, who still hadn't stopped shaking. "Yes, baby." She held out her arm, and Ruth ran into it. "Mr. Emmett's going to be just fine." "Good." Ruth pressed Bonnie against Emmett's chest. "Bonnie says you can borrow her for healing. She's very good at making people better." Emmett's bloody hand closed around the ragged doll. "Thank you, Miss Ruth. Thank you, Bonnie." Clara gathered her children close, all 3 of them pressed against her, while Emmett lay beside them, and she let herself believe, finally, that they were going to survive. The fire still crackled behind them. The smoke still stung her eyes, and somewhere Floyd Sutton's body was cooling in the Wyoming dirt. But her family was alive, and that was all that mattered. Sheriff Holbrook arrived with Doc Webb 20 minutes later. They found Clara still holding Emmett's hand, still surrounded by her children, still refusing to move until help came. The sheriff took one look at the destruction, the burning buildings, the scattered bodies, the exhausted survivors, and let out a low whistle. "What the hell happened here?" "Justice," Jesse said simply. "Long overdue." Doc Webb worked on Emmett first, his weathered hands gentle but efficient. "Bullet's still in there. I'll need to operate, but he'll live. Stubborn fool's too ornery to die." Clara sagged with relief. "And Will? His leg?" "Let me see." Doc Webb examined the boy's wound and nodded. "Flesh wound, clean. He'll be limping for a few weeks, but no permanent damage." Clara pulled Will into her arms, breathing in the smell of smoke and blood and little boy. "You were so brave." "I killed him, Mama." Will's voice was tiny. "I killed a man." "You saved my life." Clara pulled back, looking into her son's eyes. "You did what you had to do to protect your family. That's nothing to be ashamed of." "Your mama's right," Sheriff Holbrook said, crouching beside them. "Floyd Sutton was a murderer and a criminal. The territory's better off without him." He put a hand on Will's shoulder. "You did good, son. Your daddy would be proud." Will's lip trembled. "You think so?" "I know so." The cleanup took hours. Floyd's body was loaded into a wagon along with the other dead. The wounded on both sides were treated and bound. The fire, starved of fuel, eventually burned itself out, leaving the barn as nothing but charred timbers and ash. But the house still stood. Damaged, yes. Smoke-stained and bullet-riddled, but standing. "We can rebuild," Emmett said that evening, propped up in bed with Clara beside him. "The barn, the fencing, all of it." Clara smiled through her exhaustion. "You're including me in your plans now. You're going to be my wife." His hand found hers. "Everything I have is yours." "Everything I have is 3 children, a cloth doll, and a half-feral kitten." "That's everything I could ever want." Clara leaned down, resting her forehead against his. "I love you, Emmett Cole." "I love you too, Clara Sutton." He paused. "Soon to be Clara Cole." "Soon to be Clara Cole," she agreed. From the main room, she could hear Ruth's voice explaining to Tommy and Will that Bonnie had predicted they would win all along because Bonnie was very wise and knew things. Outside, Jesse and the others were making camp, refusing to leave until they were sure the danger had passed. And somewhere on the hill behind the ranch, Sarah Cole and her unnamed son rested in peace, making room in their quiet graves for the living to start again. Clara closed her eyes and let herself breathe. It was over. They were safe. And tomorrow, they would begin to rebuild. 3 weeks after the fire, Emmett Cole took his first steps without help. Clara watched from the kitchen, her hands frozen over the bread dough. He moved slowly, gripping the bedpost, his jaw clenched against pain. But he moved. "You're supposed to be resting," she called. "I've rested enough." Emmett took another step, then another. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "A man can only lie in bed so long before he goes crazy. A man can also tear his stitches and bleed all over my clean floors. Your floors." Despite the pain, his mouth twitched. "Thought this was my house." "It was your house." Clara wiped her hands on her apron and walked toward him. "Now it's our house, which means my floors." She slipped under his arm, taking his weight. He leaned against her, breathing hard. Stubborn woman. Stubborn man. Clara helped him to the chair by the fire. "Doc Webb said 6 weeks minimum. It's been 3. Doc Webb's a pessimist." "Doc Webb kept you alive." Emmett settled into the chair with a grunt. "Fair point." The front door burst open, and Ruth tumbled inside, her cheeks pink from cold. Behind her came Tommy, clutching marmalade, and Will limping slightly, but walking on his own now. "Mama! Mr. Emmett's out of bed." Ruth ran to Emmett and threw her arms around his neck. "Are you better? Are you all better now?" Getting there, little badger. Emmett winced as she squeezed too tight, but he didn't pull away. Your mama's taking good care of me. She's the best at taking care of people. Ruth climbed into his lap, ignoring Clara's protests. She took care of Papa when he was sick. She took care of all of us when we were cold and hungry. And now she's taking care of you. That she is. Tommy approached slowly, Marmalade purring against his chest. He stopped in front of Emmett and held out the cat. Marmalade missed you. Clara's breath caught. Tommy was speaking more every day now, but each new sentence still felt like a miracle. I missed Marmalade too. Emmett reached out and scratched behind the cat's ears. And I missed you, Tommy. All of you. Will hung back by the door watching. Clara noticed the shadows in her son's eyes, the weight he still carried. The nightmares had started a week after the fire dreams of Floyd's face of pulling the trigger of blood. Will. Clara crossed to him. You okay? Fine, Mama. He wasn't fine. She knew it. But pushing wouldn't help. Mr. Emmett's up, she said instead. Thought you might want to show him how Clementine's doing. Will's expression shifted. The horse had become his project over the past weeks, something to focus on besides the memories. She's better, Will said. The limp's almost gone. Why don't you tell him yourself? Will hesitated, then walked to where Emmett sat with Ruth still on his lap. Clementine's better. I've been walking her every day like you said. She even let me ride her yesterday. Just around the corral, but she didn't fight at all. That's good work, son. Emmett's voice was warm. Your father would be proud. Will's throat worked. You think so? I know so. Henry loved horses, could see it in the way he talked about them during the war. Emmett met Will's eyes. He'd be proud of the man you're becoming, Will. The way you protected your family. The way you've stepped up. I killed a man. The words came out flat, empty. Clara started forward, but Emmett held up a hand. You did, he said quietly. And that's not something you forget. It stays with you, changes you. But it doesn't define you. How do you know? Because I've killed men too. In the war, defending this ranch. Emmett's voice was heavy with old pain. I still see their faces sometimes. Still wonder if there was another way. But I did what I had to do to protect the people I loved. Just like you did. Will's eyes glistened. Does it get easier? No. Emmett was honest. But you learn to carry it. You learn to live with it. And you learn to forgive yourself. I don't know if I can. You can. Emmett reached out and gripped Will's shoulder. Because you're strong. Because you've got family who loves you. And because every day you wake up and keep going is a victory. Will stood rigid for a moment. Then something broke inside him, and he was crying, really crying the way he hadn't let himself cry since Henry died. Clara gathered him into her arms, rocking him like she had when he was small. Over his shoulder she met Emmett's eyes. Thank you, she mouthed. He nodded once. Ruth, sensing the moment, slid off Emmett's lap and took Tommy's hand. Come on, Tommy. Let's go check on the chickens. Okay. Tommy looked at Will, then at Clara. It's okay to cry, he said seriously. Mama says so. The children left, and Clara held her son until the tears ran dry. That evening, after the children were asleep, Clara found Emmett on the porch. He'd made it outside on his own, settling into the old rocking chair with a blanket across his lap. The night was cold, but clear stars scattered across the sky like scattered diamonds. You shouldn't be out here. Clara wrapped her shawl tighter and sat beside him. Needed the air. Emmett's eyes were fixed on something in the distance. Been thinking. About the hill, behind the barn. He was quiet for a moment. Sarah and the baby. I haven't been up there since you arrived. Clara's heart clenched. Do you want to go? I should. Been putting it off. He finally looked at her. Feels wrong somehow. Moving on. building a new life, like I'm betraying them. You're not. Clara took his hand. Love doesn't work that way, Emmett. What you had with Sarah was real. What we have now is real too. One doesn't cancel out the other. You're not jealous knowing I love someone else. I love someone else too. Clara smiled sadly. Henry will always be part of me, but he's gone. And he'd want me to be happy, just like Sarah would want you to be happy. Emmett was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Will you come with me to the hill I want to? I need to introduce you. Clara's eyes burned. I'd be honored. They went the next morning, moving slowly because of Emmett's wound. The children stayed behind with Martha, not understanding where Mama and Mr. Emmett were going, but accepting it with the resilience of the young. The graves were simple. 2 wooden crosses weathered by time. Sarah Cole and baby boy Cole. Emmett stood before them, hat in his hands, his face unreadable. Sarah, he said finally, I brought someone I'd like you to meet. Clara stepped forward, her throat tight. This is Clara. Emmett's voice broke. She's going to be my wife. And she's got 3 children. Beautiful children. They make the house feel alive again. He paused, gathering himself. I know it's not what we planned. I know we were supposed to grow old together, raise a whole passel of kids, watch our grandchildren run around this ranch. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that didn't happen. Tears slipped down his cheeks. But I think you'd like her, Sarah. She's strong and stubborn, and she doesn't take any nonsense from me. She makes me laugh. She makes me want to wake up in the morning. Clara reached out and took his hand. I'll never forget you, Emmett continued. Either of you. But I'm ready to live again. I hope that's okay. The wind rustled through the grass. Somewhere a bird sang, and Clara could have sworn she felt something, a presence, a warmth, a blessing. She's at peace, she said softly. They both are. Emmett looked at her, his eyes red. You think so? I know so. Clara squeezed his hand. And I think they're happy for you. They stood together in silence, honoring the past while embracing the future. The wedding was held on a Sunday in early spring. The whole town turned out, or at least it felt that way. The little church in Bitter Creek was packed to bursting, and more people stood outside craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the ceremony. Clara wore a dress of pale blue sewn by her own hands from fabric the town's women had gifted her. Her hair was pinned up with wildflowers Ruth had picked that morning. She'd never felt more beautiful. Emmett waited at the altar, clean-shaven and nervous, tugging at the collar of his new suit. Jesse stood beside him as best man, trying not to grin. Breathe, Jesse muttered. You survived Antietam. You can survive this. Antietam was easier. Then the door opened and Clara appeared. Everything else faded away. She walked down the aisle with Will on one side and Sheriff Holbrook on the other. Tommy followed, carrying the rings on a small pillow, his face serious with concentration. Ruth came last, scattering flower petals with abandon and waving at everyone she recognized. When Clara reached the altar, Emmett took her hands. His were trembling. You came, he whispered. Wild horses couldn't have stopped me. The preacher cleared his throat. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Emmett Cole and Clara Sutton in holy matrimony. If anyone knows a reason why these 2 should not be wed, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. Silence. Clara held her breath. Then Ruth's voice piped up. Nobody better say anything. Bonnie says this wedding is happening. Laughter rippled through the church. The preacher smiled. Well, that settles that. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. They exchanged vows. Emmett's voice steady for the first time since Clara had known him. She promised to love him, to honor him, to stand beside him through whatever came. He promised the same. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Emmett kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. Finally, Ruth declared, now we can have cake. More laughter. Clara pulled back, grinning. Your daughter has her priorities straight, Emmett murmured. Our daughter, Clara corrected. She's ours now. They all are. Something shifted in Emmett's expression. Wonder, joy, fear, love. Our children, he repeated, testing the words. Our children, our home, our life. He kissed her again, and the church erupted in cheers. The reception was held at the ranch. The townspeople had pitched in to rebuild the barn in time for the wedding, a gift from people who'd been strangers 8 months ago and were now neighbors, friends, family. Tables were set up in the yard, laden with food. Someone had brought a fiddle and music filled the air. Children ran wild, their laughter bright against the spring sunshine. Clara stood at the edge of it all watching. Her children, her and Emmett's children now, were in the middle of the chaos. Will was teaching some town boys how to properly throw a lasso, his limp barely noticeable anymore. Tommy sat with Blue and Marmalade whispering secrets to both, while Daniel's son tried to convince him to play tag. Ruth was demonstrating a complicated dance to anyone who would watch Bonnie tucked under her arm. They're happy. Clara turned. Emmett stood beside her, 2 cups of punch in his hands. They are. She accepted a cup. We all are. You know what I keep thinking about? Emmett's eyes were on the children. That night you arrived, the blizzard, how close we came to losing everything. But we didn't. No, we didn't. He turned to face her. You saved them, Clara. You walked through a blizzard with 3 children and nothing but hope. And you made it. We made it, Clara corrected. I got them here. But you kept them alive, kept all of us alive. We saved each other. Emmett smiled, really smiled the way he'd learned to smile since she arrived. That's how it works now. We save each other. Clara leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body beside hers. I love you, Emmett Cole. I love you too, Clara Cole. Clara Cole. She tested the name in her mind. It fit, like coming home. Hey, Mama, Papa, Ruth's voice carried across the yard. Both Clara and Emmett turned. Ruth was waving frantically Will and Tommy beside her. Papa, Emmett whispered. She called me Papa. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She's been practicing. All 3 of them have. But I never asked them to. They didn't have to be asked. Clara squeezed his hand. They love you. It just took them a while to find the right word for it. Emmett's throat worked. He blinked rapidly, trying to compose himself. Come on, Papa, Ruth shouted. Bonnie wants to dance with you. You heard her. Clara nudged him. Bonnie doesn't like to be kept waiting. Emmett laughed, the sound still unfamiliar, but growing more natural every day. He set down his cup and walked toward the children, Ruth immediately grabbing his hand and dragging him toward the makeshift dance floor. Clara watched as her husband, the man who'd been dead inside until she arrived, let a 4-year-old girl teach him to dance. She watched as Will joined them. Then Tommy, all 4 of them laughing and stumbling through steps that made no sense to anyone but themselves. Martha appeared at her elbow. Never thought I'd see the day. What day? The day Emmett Cole smiled like he meant it. Martha's voice was thick with emotion. You did that, child. You and those young'uns. You brought him back to life. He brought us back too, Clara said. We were dying when we arrived. Not just physically. Something inside us had given up. And he... She paused, searching for words. He reminded us what it felt like to hope. Martha patted her arm. That's love, child. Real love. The kind that saves people. Clara nodded, unable to speak. On the dance floor, Ruth had climbed onto Emmett's feet, letting him waltz her around while she held Bonnie up to see. Tommy watched from Will's shoulders, his face alight with something Clara hadn't seen in months, uncomplicated joy. This, she thought. This is what we were searching for. Not just safety or shelter. This, family. That night, after the guests had gone and the children were asleep, Clara and Emmett sat on the porch one last time. The stars were out again, scattered across the vast Wyoming sky. The wind carried the scent of spring, of new growth, of possibility. "You know what Ruth asked me today?" Emmett said. "What?" "She asked if I was going to die like her real papa did." Clara's heart clenched. "What did you tell her?" "Told her the truth. That everyone dies eventually, but I planned on sticking around as long as possible. That I had too much to live for to go anywhere." "And what did she say?" "She said good. Because Bonnie likes having a papa around." Emmett's voice was soft. "Then she said she loves me. Just like that. I love you, Papa." Like it was the simplest thing in the world. Clara's eyes burned. It is simple. For children. They don't overthink it like we do. Maybe we should take a lesson. Maybe we should. Emmett turned to face her. "I love you, Clara Cole. I love our children. I love this life we're building together." "I love you too." Clara leaned in and kissed him. "I love all of it." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here. The grief, the fear, the desperate flight through a blizzard with 3 children, and nothing but a dead man's promise to guide her. She thought about Henry, about the husband she'd lost, and the life that had been taken from them. She thought about Emmett, about the wounded man who'd opened his door and his heart, who'd fought and bled for a family that wasn't his by blood, but was his in every way that mattered. And she thought about the children asleep inside. Will, who'd killed a man to save his mother and was learning to forgive himself. Tommy, who'd found his voice again through the patience of a good man and the unconditional love of a dog. Ruth, who'd never stopped believing that everything would work out because Bonnie told her so. They'd survived. All of them. Not just survived. Thrived. Emmett. Thank you. For what? For being here. For taking us in. For... Clara's voice caught. For giving us a home. Emmett pulled her closer, his arm warm around her shoulders. You gave me the same thing, Clara. A home, a family, a reason to keep going. So we saved each other. We did. Clara smiled and closed her eyes. Behind her, the ranch house stood solid and warm, its walls patched but holding its rooms filled with the sounds of sleeping children. Above her, the stars kept their ancient watch. And beside her, Emmett Cole. Her husband held her hand as if he never intended to let go. She thought about Ruth's question from that first night, the one she hadn't been able to answer. Is this our home now, Mama? Clara finally had her answer. Yes, baby. Yes, it is. This is our home, and we are finally completely wonderfully home.